What if you had instant analytics on your PDP images and a faster way to create content that performs better? That's what we're diving into in today's episode, how top brands and retailers are using analytics and automation to stay ahead across retail media and the digital shelf. It's Rapid helps teams scale smarter. They analyze image performance, they help you create optimized assets for retail media networks and the digital shelf, and they integrate directly with PIM and DAM systems for seamless execution. Brands like Pepsi, Mondelez, and Instacart use its Rapid to go beyond basic tools to uncover gaps in PDP and retail media performance by analyzing the images themselves, not just the count. Streamline banner creation across hundreds of formats for Amazon Ads, Walmart Connect, and other retail and social platforms, and launch high-performing content more than 80% faster across e-commerce and marketing channels. If you're buried in manual work or struggling to keep up, this episode and It's Rapid will show you a better way. Visit itsrapid.ai to learn more.
Welcome to Beyond the Shelf with Dave Feinlieb. This show is an open exploration of the people and process behind e-commerce. Through conversations with innovators in the space, we learn the stories of these leaders and their strategies for e-commerce success. We publish new episodes every Tuesday morning, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And now, here's your host, Dave Feinlieb.
Welcome back to Beyond the Shelf. Today we're joined by Carly McMillen, co-founder of PPC Farm, the profit-first Amazon advertising agency that's rewriting the rules on how PPC should be measured and optimized. Carly's been on the front lines of Amazon ads, cracking the code on everything from pay-per-click recovery strategies to profit-aware campaign management. Under her leadership, PPC Farm helps brands boost profits by 20% in just 60 days, insisting on starting every engagement with cost of goods analysis, not just ROAS. I'm sure we'll get into what all of those things mean and more, and I can't wait to explore how she's rewriting PPC strategy and weaving creative storytelling into Amazon ad campaigns. Carly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and to share more of, what the heck does all that mean, right?
Well, take us back first. How'd you get your start in e-com and performance marketing?
Yeah, so I've been in e-com for the past 9 years or so. I actually started at a skincare brand that was on Shopify, so doing just kind of classic D2C. And then after that, I started working for the parent company of PPC Farm, and they're an Amazon seller doing 8 figures, thousands of SKUs, a dozen different brands at this point. And I started doing product development for them, which was a really fun way to kind of break into Amazon, because I was able to do everything from the market research to product design, sourcing, logistics, and then of course, finally, creating the listings and doing the marketing. And then the CEO was like, I want to start this marketing agency. I want you to run it. And I was like, that sounds like fun. So that's kind of how PPC Farm got started. So everything that we do for our clients at the agency, we do for ourselves as a seller. And we're still a seller, still, in the trenches, as they say, which I think is a pretty unique perspective in terms of how we manage the business as a whole. And that's kind of how I think we came to the profit first sort of philosophy. But yeah, so I've been in the e-com game for a while. I've also, been working remotely that whole time. So I've lived in Taiwan, Japan, and now I'm in Mexico. So that's been a really fun way to kind of take advantage of the whole remote aspect that I think e-com lends itself really well to.
What a great story. Tell us about when you were getting started thinking about products to create. How did you do the research? Did you look at reviews? Did you kind of talk to the market? How does that work?
Yeah, so I was in the gag gifts and prank product category. That was the brand I was working under. Some of the products are a little inappropriate, but there's some that I can mention. You can go look them up on Amazon, still available today, done over like 3 million in revenue since they've launched. One fun one is called the Child Chucker. It's a prank gift box. You can wrap your own gift inside, and it's really popular at baby showers. No actual children were harmed in the making of that. So yeah, in order to determine like what is a good product to go after for development, because it's not cheap when you're starting out, and you do have to kind of take some calculated risks. So on Amazon, the main thing is kind of finding those tiny niches where there might be some other competitors, but you have a little bit more of a blue ocean, right? Obviously. And on Amazon, what that looks like is competitors that aren't doing their marketing as well. They might have a good product, but the listing doesn't look very good. Images aren't good. Copywriting's not on point, right? And we can sort of swoop in and do all of those things way better, right? And same with the advertising as well, doing good keyword research and really understanding the category. So finding that sweet spot of where there's not a lot of competition, or the competition that's out there just doesn't really kind of know how to play the Amazon game, and you can come in and just immediately take a bunch of that market share, is the best way to do it on Amazon. And that's harder and harder these days, like a lot of categories are super saturated. A lot of private label, kind of off the shelf products being duplicated, copy pasted on Amazon. But it's definitely still possible to sort of find those little pockets.
How do brands stand out these days? When you go search on Amazon and other sites in certain categories, you see multiple products that are quite similar in their presentation. Do you have any formulas or secret suggestions for how brands can be distinctive in the category?
Yeah, so outside of having high keyword relevancy in terms of your advertising, if you're looking at that first page, right, it is just an ocean of products that all are essentially the same thing. Like you
Yeah.
said, how do you stand out? Amazon doesn't really give us that many ways to be creative. It has to be a product shot on a white background, and those kinds of, rules and regulations that Amazon is pretty strict about. However, there is still room for creativity. So yes, it has to be a product shot on a white background, but let's say you're selling, a supplement, then you can add in like photos of the ingredients in that supplement, like berries or, herbs or something like that, right? To kind of give your image a pop, because when it comes to click through rate on Amazon, you really just have your image, your title, price, ratings, and reviews. Those are kind of your main levers, and the image is the biggest one in order to get those eyeballs. So any way you can add pops of color or make it stand out, or 3D model your product if you have to, add sort of that we call fake packaging, so that you can clearly sort of show in like a split second how many units are inside that product or that kind of thing. So I think the best way to increase CTR is going to be your main image. And, fortunately for sellers these days, you actually don't have to even go out and hire a photographer with tools like Nano Banana and that kind of thing. It's pretty easy to run A/B tests on your main image. So that's going to be the best way. And then in terms of hierarchy of sort of like things to try next would be your title, experimenting with how the words you have in your title, that kind of thing. And then from there, probably price as far as what you have control over. That's going to be the best way to stand out if you are in a very competitive category.
Great insights. Well, I dove right into all of your knowledge. Before I talk more about what you're doing day to day, first you got to tell me, with all of this world travel, how many languages do you speak?
No, so I speak Chinese, and I speak some Japanese, and I'm working on Spanish right now. But it's funny because people are always like, well, you learned Chinese. Spanish has got to be way easier, right? And it's like,
Right.
well, yes, in some ways, like you can read all of the alphabet right off the bat, which is obviously a low barrier to entry, but it still has its challenges. So yeah, currently trying to get better at Spanish.
Tell us day to day, what are you working on? What does PPC Farm do more broadly?
Yeah, so our specialty is Amazon advertising. Sometimes when people hear PPC, they just think Google Ads, but we
Right.
specifically focus on Amazon advertising, which is similar, right, to Google Ads. I mean, it's the sponsored results on Amazon, and it's all about ranking on page one. That's the the North Star that everybody's after, and so the way that we run advertising is profit first, right? Like you were saying at the top of the show here, we focus specifically on making sure your advertising dollars are actually bringing more profit to your business, like more money to your bottom line, which sounds like, well, yeah, duh, like that's the whole point, right? But you'd maybe be surprised, a lot of brands actually end up optimizing for revenue or just simply sales growth without actually having a pulse on what sort of incremental profit their advertising is gaining them. And so that's what we focus on. And obviously it works really well because as soon as they get that next payout, as soon as a client gets their next payout from Amazon, they're like, oh, something is really working here. So like you said, one of the first questions that we ask all new clients is for their cost of goods, or at least a ballpark cost of goods, because we're using essentially, this gets a little maybe boring in accounting but we're essentially using their contribution profit as a target ACOS, or you might be familiar with ROAS, so that we kind of use that as the guidelines or the threshold in terms of what is a good return on ad spend, because each product with a different can have such a different margin and can therefore have such a different picture of what a good ROAS actually looks like, right? So a lot of people will say, so ACOS is the popular term on Amazon, right? Ad spend divided by ad sales. And so, wow, I got this 15% ACOS for this account. Like I'm doing a great job, but what does that actually mean? Where does that number come from, and why is 15 good? And maybe it's not. Maybe 15 is too low and you should be spending more. There's more sort of juice you could squeeze out of it, right? But when you use contribution margin at the ASIN level as your sort of guideline, it's a lot easier to then make tweaks and adjustments in terms of getting good ROAS out of every single ASIN in the portfolio.
How should brands be thinking about their investment in paid work that they're doing on Amazon and other retailers, and some of the other factors you mentioned, the organic, optimizing the keywords and titles and things like that? What's the right balance?
I think it's great that you called it an investment, because I think that's a really perfect perspective to have rather than an expense. I think that a lot of brands will see marketing as an expense, but those ad dollars, you are investing those, right? That is where you are going to see that incremental growth from your brand. And so advertising is kind of a non-negotiable on Amazon. And in terms of how it interacts with organic, I think that there is a common myth, a common story out there that you can simply pay to rank. And that's just really not true. Amazon, of course, is looking at your sales volume and your sales velocity in order to determine how you should rank, but that's not the only thing that it's looking for. And, you're only going to be able to spend to get whatever your sort of deserved rank is on Amazon. Not everybody can be number one, and you can dump a bunch of money into your advertising and you might be able to get a lift in your rank. But then as soon as you start pulling back and you're not actually sustainably growing those sales organically, you're going to see that rank drop, right? So I think the best way to think about it is as an investment into future sustainable sales, right? And that's where I think we get a lot of brands that are optimizing only for that, that big explosive growth and those top line revenue numbers without having that visibility into profitability.
This episode of Beyond the Shelf is brought to you by It's Rapid. It's Rapid is the platform Pepsi, Mondelez, Instacart, and hundreds of other leading brands and retailers use to build personalized content at scale. Whether that's images, videos, or product descriptions for their product detail pages, shoppable videos or banners for their digital ad campaigns, or sell sheets for sales enablement, brands that use It's Rapid are able to produce high-quality, on-brand content on average more than 80% faster than category competitors. To find out more, please visit itsrapid.ai.
Switching gears, private label, where does that fit into the equation, and how do you think about that?
So private label had a big heyday, I think, 5 to 7 years ago. And it was a great way, or even 10 years ago, and it was a great way to get into Amazon without having to invest in, patents and original IP products and engineering and doing all of that, right? And it's also a great way to launch a product on Amazon without having to do a ton of brand building, right? It's kind of like a copy paste type of a product. And no one was there was a lot less competition, back when it was having its heyday. But I think that now people have really caught on to that as a strategy. And so it's not that it's dead. You can absolutely still do private label, like I said, and market it better than the next guy. But you need to factor in that the life cycle of your product might only be a couple of years, right? You might not be able to run that same product on Amazon for a decade. You might only have, let's say, 1 to 5 years of, profitability and sales from that product before you're going to start essentially getting into price wars with your competition, and you're going to lose that margin. Because what happens is, if you find something that you can private label, kind of just buy it off the shelf, buy it off of Alibaba, whatever it may be, and then put it on Amazon, and you start having success, the competition is going to come in and they're going to do it, faster and cheaper and all of that. And so that's what I mean when I say the life cycle might be shorter. And so as long as you know that going into it, and you kind of have the mentality of, I'm just going to rinse and repeat this process of launching new products every few years, then I think that's a great way to still take advantage of private label on Amazon.
Speaking of new products, what do you recommend these days? What's working?
Our clients are across all sorts of different categories. And so I see sort of the gamut of what works and what doesn't. And I will say that the most sought after, and I would say also therefore most competitive categories, are supplements and beauty. I think that it's a lot harder to make those categories work these days, not only because of the high competition, just in terms of the volume of products available in any given subcategory of those niches, but because cost per clicks are so high in advertising. I mean, especially in supplements, you're seeing like $10 to $15 per click, even in some cases. And so the sort of the math doesn't really math. Like, the amount that you need to spend to try to acquire sales, especially for a new product, is just going to put you in the hole. I mean, you can, of course, factor in lifetime value. For example, Subscribe and Save is a great program on Amazon that allows you to increase the lifetime value of your sales, especially in a category like supplements or beauty. However, even with that factored in, it's just a very difficult category to enter into these days. On the flip side of that, I think where there is still room for new entrants is the kind of more commoditized categories, or the more boring, I guess, categories of like kitchen, home goods, and those kinds of categories where there's less it's less exciting, but it's more practical, and cost per clicks are going to be lower, your margins are going to be better, and there's going to be less competition that is marketing the products well.
Speaking of competition, how do I build a brand? How do brands build moats these days?
So it's increasingly more and more important to do that, right? To build that moat. Like I said, even if you are going after private label, you can still build a brand around it. I think that brands are a little bit less potent on Amazon than they are on other platforms. I think that the average consumer on Amazon, unless they know the brand from other, brand building activities that brand has been doing, they're okay to just go with whatever option is the cheapest and has the best ratings and reviews, right? Like that's kind of the mindset of the average Amazon shopper. So a little bit less potent, but that doesn't mean you should avoid it altogether or ignore it. It's still important to build a brand. And I think that speaks to the importance of doing off Amazon marketing in conjunction with the marketing you're doing on Amazon. So Amazon's making this easier with additional attribution, reporting, and capabilities. So you are able to see, you're able to drive traffic, for example, from TikTok to your Amazon store or your Amazon product listings, and you're able to track that attribution. So Amazon is trying to make this easier. They also have a program called Creator Connections, which is essentially like an influencer marketplace that you're able to participate in to get more of that UGC and that kind of thing. But it is increasingly important these days if you are able to build a moat, and to do that, you should be utilizing off Amazon marketing, I think, as well. So TikTok, I think in particular, is a great place to kind of cooperate with what you're doing on Amazon.
Tell us about some recent creative, any insights from tests you've run or surprising results you've seen?
Amazon recently launched a new AI video generation tool native within Amazon, and it's a lot better than it was. And so I think the main thing that you can utilize that for is just to test, right? That's always going to be the name of the game. With any creative, you need to test, because what I tell you or someone else tells you might have worked for them and their product, but you need to see what works for you. And so if you can take advantage of some of those AI tools to test, but creative that always works well. Video is definitely king on Amazon in terms of sponsored brands ads, and anything, if you're able to utilize UGC, that also does really well on Amazon. And just keeping in mind kind of the shorter the better, like the punchier the better, not including a lot of text. Like you really don't have a lot of time in the scroll to capture people's attention. So limited text on screen, right? And making it as punchy as possible. And if you can, utilizing UGC, depending on your product category. But yeah, those are the kind of main things I think that I see that are working.
When you say utilize UGC, you mean as part of the video and images and so on?
Yeah. So if, let's say you ran a TikTok campaign and you had creators, or influencers trying out your product or demonstrating your product or, using it in real life, you can take those videos then and repurpose them for your sponsored brand video ads on Amazon. So they show up, in the fold essentially of the Amazon search results page. So that's I think been particularly effective for, especially if you have a product that has like a clear demonstrable use case kind of a thing, right? I mean, if it's just a spoon or something, maybe a little bit less exciting, but like if like before and afters, those kinds of things, if you are able to utilize that within UGC, it's especially effective.
Well, I'd love to wrap up with where things are headed. We talked a little about AI. Tell us about what's new in the Amazon ecosystem, any new formats, approaches, types of creative A/B tests that you're seeing or you're using with your clients.
One of the most exciting things that Amazon actually just announced about a week ago at Amazon Accelerate is AMC, or Amazon Marketing Cloud, is now available to everybody, and you're able to utilize that data across sponsored products, sponsored brands, and sponsored display. Previously, it was only available to folks using DSP, but now we have access to essentially just a ton more data that we're able to draw insights from. For example, like what's the average time between viewing your ad and making a purchase, right? Or add to carts, right? That's something we did. It's so basic in ecom, but we didn't really have access to those metrics in the sort of standard product or ad inventory on Amazon that we now are able to see, and target and create audiences like add to cart, things like that. So I think that's one of the most exciting things that Amazon has released recently.
Really great. Well, it's time for the rapid rundown. This is a few fast-paced questions. Just your quick thoughts. First off, PPC myth you wish would disappear.
Great one. I would say that every brand must do brand defense. That is a myth that I wish would disappear. I think that a lot of brands would be surprised if you pull back on that branded search. You'll simply have the same total sales. They'll just be organic instead of paid. So,
One Amazon ad optimization tip you've learned along the way.
run low bid auto campaigns. Every single account, every single ASIN in your portfolio should have a low bid auto campaign. So an auto campaign is when Amazon decides where your ad should be displayed based on its own internal algorithms. And low bids, I usually start them at 20 cents and go up from there.
Great one. Favorite tool or dashboard for creative performance analysis?
Ooh, Amazon's own internal tools are actually pretty good in terms of doing A/B testing and running experiments. And so I would recommend using the straight from the horse's mouth data and sticking with the Amazon internal experiment tools.
One thing brands still get wrong about Amazon ad creative.
Trying to use ad creative that works on other platforms on Amazon. It is a different beast. And if you try to use something that works on TV or something like that within the search results page, I don't think you're going to get as good of results.
And when you're off the clock, what's your go-to way to unplug?
I'm a big yoga person. Been doing yoga for like 20 years, so I'm a big yogi, I guess you might say.
Super. What's the best way for our listeners to find out more about your company and reach you online?
So the agency is ppcfarm.com, and I also am super active on LinkedIn. So come find me, Carly McMillen on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, comment on one of the tons of posts that I post. I'd love to chat.
Carly, thanks for sharing your insights. I learned a ton, and I hope you'll come back on Beyond the Shelf.
Thank you so much. It was great.
That's it for this week's episode of Beyond the Shelf. If you enjoy the show, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. It really helps us grow. And feel free to share us with your colleagues so they too can hear weekly perspectives from the brightest minds in e-commerce. You can also check us out on LinkedIn, where we post clips from each episode, share Dave's takes on breaking industry news, and much more. Beyond the Shelf is a production of It's Rapid. Our host is Dave Feinlieb, and our producers are Sean Levy-Ashvili and Jake Musiker. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Shelf.